My name is Maya Brooks. I'm 34 years old and I am a music producer. Or at least I was. The sound is what I remember first. Not the shouting. Not the laughter from my sister's phone. But the sound of the sledgehammer. It was a wet, heavy crack. The sound of something expensive and precise being broken by something cheap and brutal. I stood in the doorway of my own home studio, my keys still in my hand. My brother, Caleb, had his back to me. His shoulders were tense under his thin t-shirt. He lifted the sledgehammer again, its metal head catching the light from my monitors. For a second, he looked like a statue, a monument to pure rage. Then he swung. The hammer came down on my mixing board. My $15,000 Audient console. It was the heart of my studio. The thing I had saved for 3 years to buy. The place where I had mixed 3 Grammy-winning tracks. The sound it made when it broke was a sickening crunch of metal, plastic, and splintering circuits. Sparks flew. A puff of smoke drifted into the air. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. My mind was just a flat line of white noise. Through it all, I could hear my sister, Bella. She was standing a few feet away from Caleb, holding her phone up, live streaming the whole thing. She wasn't trying to stop him. She was narrating. "Oh my God. You guys, look at him go," she said, her voice giddy and high. She turned the phone camera to her face for a moment, smiling wide. This is what happens when you don't share your success. Some people need to be taught a lesson about what family means. Caleb grunted and swung again. This time, at my rack of preamps. More shattering glass. More ruined metal. He turned his head. His face red and sweaty. His eyes wild. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at Bella's phone. At her audience. He was performing. My keys slipped from my hand and clattered on the hardwood floor. The small sound broke the spell. Bella's head snapped toward me. Her smile widened. It was a predator's smile. She pointed the phone directly at my face. "And here she is," Bella announced to her followers. "The Queen herself just got home to see what happens when you forget about the people who raised you." Caleb dropped the sledgehammer. It landed with a heavy thud that seemed to shake the whole room. He took a step toward me. His chest puffed out. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low and dangerous. But I knew this wasn't a talk. This was a demolition. And it had only just begun. The price of ambition. That studio wasn't just a room with expensive equipment. It was my life. It was 15 years of sacrifice. Of 80-hour weeks. Of choosing work over friends. Over sleep. Over everything. It was a $120,000 sanctuary that I had built with my own 2 hands. Piece by painful piece. And my family had never once understood it. It started when I was 19 inches, a cramped bedroom in my parents' house. I had a cheap laptop, a pirated copy of a music program, and a pair of broken headphones. I spent every night awake, teaching myself how to build a beat, how to layer sounds, how to make something out of nothing. My parents would walk by my door and sigh. Maya, are you still playing on that computer? My mom would ask. It's not healthy to be cooped up in here all day. To them, it was a game. Caleb was the star of the family. He played football. He was loud and popular, and his successes were simple and easy for them to brag about at family dinners. He got a trophy, a picture in the local paper. I got a new synth sound I was proud of. They didn't see the difference. I worked 2 jobs to buy my first real piece of gear. A microphone. I was a waitress by day and cleaned office buildings by night. I saved every dollar. I ate instant noodles for months. When I finally brought the microphone home in its pristine box, I showed it to my dad. He glanced at it. How much did that cost? He asked. I told him. He just shook his head. You could have put that toward a down payment on a sensible car. Maya. Caleb, who was there, just laughed. What are you going to do with that thing? Sing. He and his friends thought it was hilarious. They'd bang on my bedroom door, yelling, "Is the rock star in there?" Their dismissal was like a constant low hum in the background of my life. It never stopped. It just became something I learned to ignore. I moved out as soon as I could into a tiny apartment with a walk-in closet. That closet became my first real recording booth. I lined the walls with cheap foam mattress toppers to dampen the sound. I spent years in that dark, stuffy space. Learning, working, sending out hundreds of demos to indie artists and small labels. Most of my emails were never answered, but a few were. I did my first real project for free for a local band that needed a demo. They loved it. They told their friends. Slowly, word got out. I started charging $50 a song, then $100, then $1,000. Every spare dollar went back into the studio. I never went on vacation. I never bought fancy clothes. My friends were getting married, buying houses, and having kids. I was buying acoustic panels and vintage compressors. When I finally had enough to put a down payment on my own small house, the only thing I cared about was whether it had a room I could convert into a proper studio. Entitlement and envy. The first time I told my family I was working with a signed artist, they were sitting around the dinner table. I was nervous but also excited. I thought, this is it. This is something they can understand. I'm producing a track for an artist on Atlantic Records, I said, my voice barely a whisper. My mom smiled. That vague, pleasant smile she always did when she wasn't really listening. Oh, that's nice. Dear. Bella, pass the potatoes. Bella, who was already trying to become a social media influencer, scoffed. Atlantic? Are you sure? They don't just work with people who make beats in their basement. Caleb chimed in. Yeah. Maya. Don't get scammed. You should probably have me look over the contract. Make sure they're not taking advantage of you. There was no pride. There was no excitement for me. There was only suspicion and dismissal. They couldn't imagine that I had earned it. In their minds, I was still just their weird little sister playing with computers. The real turning point, I thought, would be the Grammy. I wasn't the main producer on the album, but I had co-produced and mixed 2 of the key tracks. When the album won, my name was in the credits. I received a certificate from the Recording Academy. I had it professionally framed. I brought it to my parents' house for Christmas. I thought, there's no way they can ignore this. It's a Grammy. I showed it to them. My dad held it, squinting at the small print. "So, you didn't win the statue?" he asked. "No, Dad," I explained patiently. "The main artists and producers get the statues, but I'm officially a Grammy-winning producer now. It's a huge deal for my career." Caleb picked it up and weighed it in his hand. "Huh. So what? You get paid more now." That was always the bottom line for them. Money. They didn't care about the art, the passion, the 15 years of relentless work. They only understood success when it had a dollar sign attached to it. And the moment they realized my hobby was making real money, their attitude changed. It didn't become respect. It became entitlement. "You know, my construction business is a little slow right now," Caleb would say on the phone. "Maybe you could float me a loan. $10,000. You probably make that in a week." "Maya, there's this brand that wants me to promote their makeup," Bella would text me. "But my engagement is a little low. Could you get one of your famous musician friends to give me a shout out?" They saw my studio not as something I had built, but as a resource they could mine. They wanted the fruit, but they had only ever mocked the tree as it was growing. When I said no, when I tried to set boundaries, their entitlement curdled into resentment. To them, my refusal wasn't about protecting my career. It was about me being selfish. It was me, the little sister from the bedroom, getting a big head and forgetting where I came from. The shakedown. So, when I saw Caleb standing there with that sledgehammer and Bella with her phone, I understood. This wasn't a random explosion. This was the bill for 15 years of their jealousy finally coming due. They weren't there to talk. They were there to collect. Caleb took another step toward me. The wild look in his eyes was gone, replaced by something colder, more focused. He was a businessman now, here to negotiate a hostile takeover. $50,000, he said. His voice was flat. "That's what you're going to give me. Cash." I finally found my voice. It came out as a choked whisper. "Caleb, what are you doing? Have you lost your mind?" "No," he said, shaking his head slowly. "I've just found it. I'm done watching you sit in here hoarding all this money while your family struggles." Struggles. I almost laughed. Caleb drove a brand new truck. My parents had paid for half of his down payment on his house. Bella spent hundreds of dollars a week on clothes and brunch to keep up her influencer lifestyle. Bella chimed in, keeping the phone pointed at me. She doesn't get it. Caleb. She's so out of touch. Look at all this stuff. She swept her phone around the room, showing her audience the wreckage. This is all just toys to her. Meanwhile, real people are working hard every day. My eyes darted around the room. The mixing board was a disaster. A corpse of wires and broken knobs. He'd also taken out a set of studio monitors. Their cones ripped open. My computer screen was shattered. A spiderweb of glass. This wasn't just $50,000. This was $100,000 in damage. Maybe more. This was my entire livelihood. Panic began to rise in my chest. Hot and sharp. I needed to call the police. I reached into my pocket for my phone. Caleb saw the movement. In 2 quick strides, he was in front of me. He grabbed my wrist, his fingers squeezing tight. Don't even think about it, he hissed. He was so much stronger than me. He twisted my arm and shoved me backward. I stumbled, my heel catching on a cable. I fell hard against my equipment rack. The metal edge dug into my back and a sharp pain shot up my spine. My head hit one of the steel panels with a dull thud. For a second, the room spun. I heard Bella let out a delighted gasp. Oh my God. You guys. Did you see that? She said to her live stream. She's getting violent. He was just trying to talk to her and she attacked him. I pushed myself up, my whole body shaking. The lie was so blatant, so absurd. It cut through my fear. She was twisting everything in real time. He pushed me. I screamed, looking directly into the lens of her phone. I wanted her audience to hear it. He's destroying my home and he assaulted me. A stream of comments flew up Bella's screen. I could only catch a few. Lol. She's so dramatic. Get her. Caleb. Make her pay. Family first. She deserves it. My heart sank. They believed her. She had been feeding them a narrative about her greedy, selfish sister for months. I was the villain of her story. This was just the climax. Caleb pointed a thick finger at my face. You bring the cops here and I will tell them you attacked me. I'll tell them you've been doing drugs in here. Who are they going to believe? Maya? Me. A respected local business owner. Or you? A weirdo who locks herself in a dark room all day. He picked up one of my favorite microphones. An old vintage Neumann I had spent a year tracking down. He held it in his hand, examining it. This looks expensive, he said casually. He looked at me, then at the floor. I could drop this. Or you could agree to be a better sister. What do you want, Caleb? I asked, my voice trembling. I just wanted this to stop. I told you. 50 grand for the trouble you've caused me. For the stress. And I want a meeting with that producer from Interscope," Bella added, not moving the phone. "The one you had lunch with last week. You're going to introduce me. And you're going to tell him my social media brand is the next big thing. And you're going to put 3 of my guys on your payroll," Caleb continued. "You don't have to give them real work. Just pay them $1,000 a week each." The demands were insane. They had planned this. This was a coordinated attack. A shakedown. I stared at them. My brother. His face a mask of smug entitlement. My sister. Her eyes gleaming with malicious glee. These were the same 2 people I had grown up with. I didn't recognize them at all. "No," I said. The word was quiet, but it felt heavy in the air. Caleb's face darkened. "What did you say?" I said no. He didn't even hesitate. He opened his hand and let the microphone drop. It hit the concrete floor with a sickening crack. "Another piece of my life gone." "Wrong answer," he said. He walked over to my guitar collection and reached for my prized possession. A 1968 Martin acoustic that had belonged to my mentor. "Let's try this again." Tears were streaming down my face now. They were destroying my spirit. They were trying to break me down so completely that I would have no choice but to give them what they wanted. And they were succeeding. The siege. They left as suddenly as they had arrived. After securing my promise to consider their terms within 48 hours. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. I stood in the middle of the room for what felt like an hour. Just staring. I was looking at a crime scene. And the criminals were my own family. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat on the floor of my ruined studio watching the sun come up. The email arrived the next day from Caleb. Subject: Family Plan. It was a formal list of their demands, framed as a corporate negotiation to ensure family harmony. At the same time, Bella's social media campaign began. She posted a carefully edited clip. It didn't show the sledgehammer. It just showed my face twisted in anger. Then cut to Bella crying about how hard it is when someone you love gets lost in their success. Strangers flooded my business page with hate. My rating dropped from 5 stars to 2. The real damage started on day 3. David, an A&R executive I worked with, called me. "Maya, what the hell is going on? My feed is full of this stuff about you. We have a project scheduled. My boss is nervous." I tried to explain, but the doubt was there. The trust I had spent over a decade building was evaporating because of a 60-second lie. I was trapped. If I went to the police, Caleb would retaliate with lies. If I did nothing, they would destroy me. The morning I realized they had changed the locks to my own house was the moment the ground fell out from beneath me. I had stayed at a hotel, and when I came back, my key wouldn't turn. A note from my mom was taped to the door. "We're here to help you. We'll all talk tonight at our house for a family intervention." They hadn't just attacked me. They had invaded me. I checked Bella's Instagram. She was live streaming from my living room, drinking from my coffee mug. "We're here to protect her from herself," she told the camera. Behind her, Caleb was strumming my guitar. They were broadcasting their takeover. The turning point. I sat in my car, watching them. Despair turned into resolve. The victim was gone. They were right about one thing. It was time for an intervention. But it wasn't going to be mine. For 2 days, I existed in a fog in my hotel room. Then, while mindlessly scrolling, a memory sparked. The security cameras. 2 years ago, I had installed 2 small, discrete high-definition cameras in the studio for insurance purposes. One wide-angle, one focused on the workstation. They recorded to a cloud server. My heart hammered against my ribs. I logged into the security website. Motion detected. I clicked play. The image was crystal clear. The audio was perfect. The camera captured everything. Caleb swinging the hammer. Bella laughing. The shove. The lies. The specific demands for $50,000 and fake jobs. It was all there. Undeniable. Unedited. The truth. A switch flipped inside me. The producer in me took over the part of me that is meticulous and relentless. I was no longer a victim. I was building a case. My hotel room became a war room. I downloaded every second of footage. I transcribed the audio. Then I went after their digital footprint. I archived Bella's posts. Her harassment. Her fake claims of collaboration. I dug into Caleb's construction business and found he was using stock photos to fake his portfolio. Fraud. I had a mountain of evidence, but I needed backup. I called my cousin Julian. Julian was the family outcast. An accountant who had been excommunicated 5 years ago for refusing to participate in one of Caleb's shady schemes. We met at a coffee shop. I showed him everything. He wasn't shocked. He was grim. "I'm so sorry, Maya," he said. "I always knew Caleb was a bully and a con artist. And Bella is a parasite." Julian became my strategist. He helped me organize the evidence not just as a record of pain, but as a weapon. "This email from Caleb is your silver bullet," he said. "Extortion is a serious crime, and Bella has violated every term of service on social media. We can take them both down." We built the case files. One for the police, one for the state licensing board, one for the social media legal teams. If this story touches you, please subscribe to the channel and share this video to help me grow. Your support helps me stand up and share the truth. As we prepared, Julian looked at me. "This isn't just about Caleb and Bella," he said. "This is about the whole system that created them. When you go to that intervention, you're confronting all of them. All the excuses. All the secrets. The intervention." I walked into my parents' house at exactly 7 p.m. I was dressed in a sharp blazer, my face calm. The living room was full. parents, aunts, uncles, the jury. Caleb and Bella stood together. The prosecutors. Bella was live streaming. Of course. She's here. Everyone, she whispered dramatically. Caleb stepped forward. Maya, we're all here because we love you. You've been unwell. Destroying your studio was a cry for help. My mother nodded, her voice trembling. We just want to help. We've decided Caleb and Bella should manage your finances for a while. A conservatorship via public shaming. That was their plan. Caleb smiled. A patronizing, smug smile. It's all settled. I didn't cry. I walked calmly to the large flat-screen TV. I took out my laptop and an HDMI cable. You're right, Caleb, I said, my voice clear. We should talk about what happened. And I agree. Bella, your audience should see everything. 2. No edits. I plugged in the laptop. The screen flickered to life. I clicked a file named The Full Picture. MP4. The sound of the sledgehammer hitting my mixing board echoed through the quiet living room. It was shockingly loud. They saw Caleb's rage. They heard Bella's giddy narration. This is what happens when you don't share your success. Caleb's smugness melted into slack-jawed shock. Bella's smile froze. The video continued to the moment Caleb shoved me. A collective gasp went through the room. They saw me fall. They heard Bella laugh. That was the moment everything broke. My mother made a wounded sound. My father looked utterly ashamed. Bella fumbled with her phone, trying to end the stream, but it was too late. Her panic was broadcast to the world. The video ended. I turned to face them. That video, I said, is Exhibit A in the police report I will be filing tomorrow morning for felony vandalism, physical assault, and criminal extortion. The word police sucked the air out of the room. Maya? Let's not be hasty. My father stammered. I am done being hasty. I cut him off. I am done keeping the peace. Tonight is not a negotiation. It is a notification. I turned to Caleb. You demanded $50,000 in fake jobs. That is extortion. You smashed my property. That is assault. And I also sent your fraudulent portfolio photos and your extortion emails to the State Construction Licensing Board. Their investigators seemed very interested. Caleb's face was ashen. He knew his life as the successful son was over. I turned to Bella. She was crying now, tears of self-pity. Bella, I have sent a comprehensive dossier of your harassment, copyright infringement, and incitement to the legal departments of Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Your accounts will be gone by the end of the week. You can't do that, she sobbed. That's my life. No, I said. You tried to ruin my life. I'm just showing everyone who you really are. You are both blacklisted in the industry. Julian stepped forward then. This isn't the first time, he told the family. You covered up Caleb's scams. You excused Bella's cruelty. This isn't Maya's fault. This is the bill for decades of your silence. My parents had no defense. The truth had stripped them of all their excuses. The quiet. 2 weeks later, the consequences landed. Caleb's construction license was revoked. I saw him working as a laborer for another crew, looking small. Bella's digital world vanished. Her accounts were terminated. She became a ghost online. My studio was rebuilt. I used the insurance money to make it stronger. Better. The room was no longer just my sanctuary. It was my fortress. My reputation was restored and strengthened. I was the producer who had fought back. Sometimes late at night, I sit in my new studio, surrounded by the quiet hum of the machines. The silence is the most profound change. The constant noise of my family's drama is gone. All that's left is the peace I have fought for. They tried to silence my life's work with the crashing noise of a sledgehammer, but all they did was clear the room. And in that perfect quiet, for the first time in a long time, I could finally hear my own music again. And it was beautiful. And I became a student of human nature. I saw greed, kindness, desperation, and love check in and out every day. Beatrice guided my finances with a firm hand. A portion of every paycheck went into a savings account she helped me open. This is your freedom fund, she called it. When it was large enough, she helped me make my first investment, a small fractional ownership in a commercial property downtown. It was terrifying to sign that check. But Beatrice was calm. You're not buying property, Audrey. You're buying power. You're buying a piece of the city that tried to break you. As my savings grew, so did my ambitions. I took night classes in business management at the local community college. It was there, in a classroom, that I met Julian Hayes. He was a few years older than me, a law student working 2 jobs to pay his tuition. He was quiet, intense, and brilliant. We became study partners, then friends. He understood the law not just as a set of rules, but as a system of protection and leverage. One day, I told him my story, the whole thing. He listened without interruption, his expression unreadable. When I finished, he just said, "They left you with nothing. That was their mistake. It means you have no weaknesses they can exploit." Julian became the architect of my legal fortress. After he graduated and passed the bar, he was the first person I hired. He helped me set up my first corporation, a shell company to manage my investments. He drafted contracts that were airtight. He taught me about trusts, liability, and the importance of a paper trail. "We will document everything," he said. "We will build a case so strong that no one will ever be able to touch what's yours." He was methodical, cautious, and fiercely loyal. He was the second brick in my wall. The world was changing. It was the late 90 seconds, and the tech boom was just beginning. Beatrice, with her old-school business sense, was skeptical. But I saw something else. I saw a new world being built. One without the old rules and old money that had crushed me. It was a world where a smart idea and hard work could create an empire from nothing. Through a tech investment forum, I met Chloe Kim. She was a genius coder, a socially awkward but visionary young woman who could see the future in lines of code. She was working on a new type of data encryption software. Most investors didn't understand it. They thought it was too niche. But I understood the need for security. I understood the desire to protect what was yours. I invested everything I had in her startup. It was the biggest risk of my life. Beatrice thought I was crazy. Julian drew up the paperwork with a worried look on his face. But I trusted Chloe, and I trusted my gut. Chloe became the third brick in my wall. With my funding and business guidance, her company took off. The encryption software became an industry standard. The returns were astronomical. I wasn't just financially secure anymore. I was wealthy. But it was never just about the money. It was about what the money represented: safety, independence, control. With Julian managing the legal side and Chloe guiding my tech investments, I built my fortress. Every asset was placed in a complex web of trusts. Every communication was archived. Every potential threat was analyzed. I moved from the small apartment into a house I designed myself. It was modern, secure, and private. It was a home, but it was also a headquarters. Years passed. I was no longer a victim. I was the CEO of my own life. My past was not a source of shame, but a case study. My parents and Caleb were cautionary tales, examples of what happened when you underestimated someone. I never forgot the lessons they taught me: betrayal, abandonment, erasure. I had used those lessons to build my armor, and I was ready for a war I knew one day would come. For years, my life was a fortress. It was built of work, investments, legal protections, and the quiet, steady friendship of Julian and Chloe. I was safe. I was successful. I was in control. But my fortress was also empty. It was a home with no one to come home to. The silence that I had once craved as a refuge began to feel like a punishment. I was 29 when I realized I was pregnant again. It was an accident, the result of a brief, unremarkable relationship that had ended months earlier. But this time, I wasn't a scared 7-year-old. I was a self-made woman. I had resources. I had a home. This time, I could do it right. The news settled in my heart not as a crisis, but as a quiet, blooming hope. This was a chance to build a family on my own terms, to give a child the unconditional love I had never known. Beatrice had passed away 2 years earlier, a quiet end to a powerful life. I missed her counsel more than ever. I would sit in my large, silent house and talk to her as if she were there, asking her what to do. I knew what she would say: Stop thinking and start doing. Build something. So, I began to build a nursery. I painted the walls a soft, gentle yellow. I bought a crib. I read books on motherhood. For the first time since I was a teenager, I allowed myself to feel vulnerable, to hope for a future that wasn't about defense, but about love. Then, at 5 months, I lost the baby. It happened late one night. There was a sudden, sharp pain, and then a quiet, devastating finality. I was alone. I drove myself to the hospital, my hands steady on the wheel, my mind strangely calm. The doctors were kind. They used gentle words like miscarriage and unfortunate. They told me it wasn't my fault. But as I lay in the sterile white room, a profound and terrible grief washed over me. It was a grief for the child I would never hold. But it was also a grief for the 7-year-old girl who had been so full of terror and hope. Twice now, a child had been taken from me. The first time by cruelty, the second time by fate. I felt as if I was cursed, as if the universe was reinforcing the verdict my parents had delivered years ago. I was not meant to be a mother. I didn't cry in the hospital. I didn't cry on the drive home. I walked into the yellow nursery, closed the door, and sat on the floor. And then I shattered. All the pain I had suppressed for more than a decade, the rejection, the abandonment, the loneliness came pouring out. I mourned the daughter I had just lost, and I mourned the child I had been, the one who was forced to become a soldier when all she wanted was a home. I stayed in that room for 3 days. Julian and Chloe called, but I didn't answer. On the 3rd day, I stood up. I looked at the empty crib and I heard Beatrice's voice in my head as clear as if she were standing beside me. Betrayal is a fire. You can let it burn you down to ash, or you can use it to forge yourself into something stronger. My grief was a fire. My loss was a fire. I could let it turn my hope to ash, or I could use it. I came out of that room with a new resolve. Fate would not decide my future. My parents would not have the final say on my life. I would be a mother. I would build my family. I would do it my way. The adoption process was long and invasive. It required me to open up my life to scrutiny, to answer questions about my past. But I was not ashamed. My past was a testament to my strength. 2 years later, I flew to a small town in East Texas. I walked into a government building, and a social worker placed a tiny 4-month-old baby boy into my arms. He had a shock of black hair and big, curious brown eyes. He looked at me, and his tiny hand wrapped around my finger. In that moment, the fortress around my heart dissolved. This was my son. I named him Leo Sterling. I gave him my last name, the name I had carried through shame and into triumph. I was reclaiming it. It was no longer the name of the man who had disowned me. It was the name of Leo's mother. It was our name. Raising Leo was the single greatest joy of my life. He filled my quiet house with laughter and noise. He was a brilliant, inquisitive child. He was fascinated by how things worked. He took apart toasters and remote controls, not out of mischief, but out of a deep desire to understand them. Chloe, my friend and business partner, became his unofficial aunt. She saw his spark immediately. She gave him his first computer, taught him his first line of code when he was 8. I gave him the childhood I never had. A childhood of safety, encouragement, and unconditional love. There were no expectations he had to live up to other than to be kind and to follow his passions. His passion was technology. By the time he was 16, he was already designing complex software. He wasn't just my son. He was my legacy. A legacy of love, not blood. A legacy built from a choice I had made, not an accident of biology. His success was my success. It was the beautiful, thriving life I had built from the ashes of my past. But I was a strategist. I had learned from Beatrice and Julian that every strength can also be a vulnerability. Leo's brilliance made him visible. It made him a target. And I knew that somewhere out there, the ghosts of my past were watching, waiting for an opportunity. His success, I feared, would become the perfect bait for their greed. The first sign of trouble came in the form of a magazine article. It was a feature in a major tech journal about the next generation of innovators. There was a full-page photo of Leo, now 17, standing in front of a complex diagram of his latest project, a revolutionary new data compression algorithm. The article praised his genius, his vision, and mentioned his supportive single mother, Audrey Sterling, a private investor in the tech sector. I was proud, but a cold knot of dread formed in my stomach. The article made us visible. It put our names, the name Sterling, into the public record. For 22 years, I had lived a quiet, private life. Now, a spotlight was shining on us. A week later, the first letter arrived. It was addressed to Leo but sent to my office. The return address was a house in my old neighborhood. The handwriting on the envelope was my mother's. Julian was in my office when it came. I looked at the letter on my desk as if it were a bomb. "They found us," I said. "We knew they would eventually," he replied, his voice calm. "What's the plan?" "The plan is the same as it has always been," I said. "We are a fortress. We do not engage." I threw the letter in the trash, unopened. But they were persistent. A week later, a large, expensive gift basket was delivered to our house. It was filled with snacks, gadgets, and a card addressed to our dearest grandson, Leo. The card was signed, "With all our love, your grandparents, Arthur and Evelyn Sterling." Leo was confused. "I thought your parents were gone." I had told him the truth about my past when he was old enough to understand. He knew I had been kicked out, but I had spared him the ugliest details. He knew them as distant, abstract figures of cruelty, not as real people who might show up at our door. "They are gone, honey," I said. taking the card from his hand and dropping it into the shredder. These are just two strangers who share some DNA with me. They are not your grandparents. They didn't stop. They sent more letters. More gifts. They started leaving messages on my office voicemail. Their voices thick with fake emotion. "Audrey, please." My mother's voice pleaded. "We've made terrible mistakes. We just want to know our grandson. We just want to be a family again." Then came the emails. Not just to me, but to the general inquiry address for one of my companies. And then the social media posts started. My mother created a Facebook page. She posted old photos of me as a child, followed by long, rambling posts about her heartbreak and her desperate search for her long-lost daughter and the grandson she had never been allowed to meet. She was crafting a public narrative, painting herself as a victim. The final piece of the nightmare fell into place a month later. I received an email from a name I hadn't seen in 22 years, Caleb Montgomery. The email was pathetic. He wrote about his failed businesses, his messy divorce, the fact that his wealthy parents had cut him off. He said he had made a terrible mistake all those years ago. He said he thought about me and our child every day. He wanted to see me. He wanted to apologize. He wanted to be a part of our lives. I didn't respond. A week later, Julian's legal team discovered that Caleb had been in contact with my parents. They had formed an alliance. Their strategy became clear. They weren't just trying to guilt me anymore. They were preparing for a legal attack. The official letter came from their new lawyer. It was a formal demand for visitation rights. They were suing me for grandparent rights, claiming I was alienating them from their only grandchild. The letter was full of lies, portraying me as a cruel, vindictive woman who was denying a loving family their rightful place in a young boy's life. The lawsuit was their declaration of war. They had seen the article about Leo. They had seen the dollar signs attached to his name. They didn't want a grandson. They wanted a winning lottery ticket. They had discarded me when I was a liability. Now that I was an asset, they wanted to claim their share. I sat in Julian's office, the lawyer's letter on the table between us. I wasn't scared. I wasn't even angry. I felt a profound, ice-cold clarity. The moment I had been preparing for my entire adult life had finally arrived. They think this is a fight about family, I said to Julian. They think they can use emotion and public opinion to win. What is it a fight about? He asked. I looked out the window at the Austin skyline, a city I now owned a part of. It's a business transaction, I said, and they have no idea how badly I am about to bankrupt them. If this story touched you, please subscribe to the channel and share this video to help me grow. My parents and Caleb made a crucial mistake. They thought they were fighting the 7-year-old girl they had thrown away. They had no concept of the woman I had become. They fought with clumsy emotion and public lies. I fought with precision, technology, and overwhelming evidence. The lawsuit was filed, and the game began. As part of the proceedings, they had to communicate with me through legal channels. Julian set up a special email address and phone line, all of which were recorded and archived. It was a digital trap, and they walked right into it. My mother would leave long, tearful voicemails performing her grief for the court record. "I just want to hold my grandson," she'd cry. "Why are you doing this to your own mother?" An hour later, Chloe's team would intercept an email from that same mother to her friends, boasting that their lawyer said they had a slam dunk case and that they would soon be set for life. My father was more direct. He sent threatening emails disguised as fatherly concern. "You're making a huge mistake. Audrey, you need to think about what's best for the boy. A boy needs a grandfather." We matched the timestamp of that email to a public post on a stock market forum where he was bragging to strangers about his genius grandson and how the family was about to come into a lot of money. Caleb was the most reckless. He was desperate. He sent emails directly to me, bypassing the lawyers. He pleaded. He threatened. He tried to blackmail me with our past. In one particularly stupid email, he outlined a settlement offer. If I gave him a 20% stake in Leo's software company, he would testify that my parents were unfit, and I would win the case. He was trying to play both sides. He didn't realize he was just documenting his own conspiracy to commit fraud. We collected everything. Every email. Every voicemail. Every social media post. Every financial record we could legally obtain. Chloe and her team built a timeline. A digital web of their greed and deception. It was irrefutable. It was devastating. And we kept it all hidden. We let them think they were winning. We let them build their case of lies, unaware that we were building a mountain of truth to bury them with. The climax was the Austin Tech Summit. Leo was the keynote speaker. It was the biggest moment of his young career. He was set to present his algorithm to the most powerful people in the industry. I knew my parents and Caleb would be there. They had secured tickets through a distant acquaintance. Their plan was to confront us publicly, to stage a scene, to paint themselves as the loving grandparents being denied a chance to see their grandson shine. I had a different plan. The ballroom was packed. Leo was backstage running through his presentation. I was in the control booth with a technician. As the host of the summit walked on stage to introduce the keynote, he paused. "Before we hear from the brilliant Leo Sterling," he said, "we have a short tribute to the people who help make innovation possible. The mentors, the believers, the ones who see potential before anyone else." The lights in the ballroom dimmed. The giant screens on either side of the stage lit up. It started with photos of famous innovators with their mentors. Then, a photo of a young Chloe Kim appeared on the screen, followed by a photo of me. Finally, a picture of Beatrice Thorne, smiling and strong. And then her voice filled the room. It was from an old interview I had recorded with her years ago for a business school project. "Family." Her voice echoed through the massive speakers. "Clear and steady?" People get that word wrong. They think it's about blood. It's not. Blood is just biology. Family is who stands by you when you have nothing. Family is who lifts you up, not who tears you down. Family is a choice. It's the people you choose to build your life with, and the people who choose to build with you. As she spoke, a slideshow of photos played on the screen. Me and Beatrice in the hotel kitchen. Me and Julian in his first law office. Me and Chloe in her tiny startup garage. And then, photo after photo of me and Leo reading him a book as a toddler, helping him with a science project, standing beside him at his first robotics competition, hugging him, laughing with him. I scanned the audience and found them. My father, my mother, and Caleb, sitting together 3 rows from the back. Their faces were frozen in shock. They had come expecting a fight. They had come to make a scene. Instead, they were forced to sit in a dark, silent room and listen to a ghost define the one thing they had never understood. The video ended with Beatrice's final words. You don't get to discard people and then claim them when they become valuable. Family is not a stock you can buy when it's low and sell when it's high. It's a bond. And it has to be earned. The screen went black. There was a moment of stunned silence. And then the room erupted in applause. They thought it was just an inspiring tribute. But I knew it was the first shot in the final battle. The trap had been set. Now it was time to snap it shut. The morning after the tech summit, we held a press conference. We didn't choose a fancy hotel or a corporate boardroom. We held it on the steps of the Beatrice Thorne Children's Shelter, the first project my foundation had ever funded. The symbolism was intentional. The media was in a frenzy. The emotional tribute at the summit, followed by the news of a lawsuit from my estranged parents, had created a story they couldn't resist. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. I stood at the podium with Julian on one side and Leo on the other. Leo had insisted on being there. I'm not a kid, Mom, he had said last night. This is my life too. I want to stand with you. Julian stepped up to the microphone first. He was calm, professional, and methodical. Good morning. We are here today to address the civil suit filed against my client, Ms. Audrey Sterling, by Mr. Arthur Sterling, Ms. Evelyn Sterling, and their associate, Mr. Caleb Montgomery. They are suing for grandparental rights based on their biological connection to Ms. Sterling. He paused, letting the words hang in the air. Their claim is based on a lie, and we have the evidence to prove it. On a large digital screen set up behind us, a document appeared. It was a legal agreement dated 22 years ago. This is a document signed by Mr. Decided and Mrs. Sterling as part of a settlement with the Montgomery family at that time. In it, they formally and legally relinquished any and all parental rights, responsibilities, and future claims to Ms. Sterling and her unborn child. They did this willingly. They did this to protect their social standing. A collective gasp went through the crowd. The document, with their signatures clear as day, was undeniable. Their entire legal case had just evaporated. But Julian wasn't finished. Their motives for this lawsuit are not about family. They are about money. The screen changed. It now displayed a series of emails. The first was from Caleb Montgomery to my father. It read, "Once we get the settlement, my cut is 20%. We need to present a united front." The next screen showed my mother's Facebook posts, the ones filled with heartbroken pleas for her darling grandson, next to screenshots of her private messages to friends. One read, "Our lawyer says we can get millions. Leo is worth a fortune." The evidence was overwhelming. The trap had not just snapped shut. It had annihilated them. Julian laid out the entire conspiracy email by email, voicemail by voicemail. He exposed their greed, their lies, and their pathetic attempts at manipulation. When he was done, a heavy silence fell over the crowd. The reporters were speechless, furiously typing notes. Then I stepped up to the microphone. I looked directly into the cameras. I knew they were watching. My voice was not angry. It was not emotional. It was the calm, a steady voice of a woman who was simply stating facts. For 22 years, I began. I have lived with the choice my parents made. They chose their reputation over their daughter. They turned me out of their home when I was 17 and pregnant because I was, in their words, a disgrace. They erased me from their lives. I paused. I accepted their choice. I built a new life. A better life. I found a new family. One built on love and loyalty, not biology. And I was blessed to become a mother. I put my arm around Leo, who stood tall and proud beside me. The lawsuit filed by Arthur and Evelyn Sterling is based on the claim that they are the biological grandparents of my son. This is the final lie I am here to correct today. I took a deep breath. This was the final blow. The truth I had guarded so carefully for 17 years. My son, Leo Sterling, is the greatest gift of my life. I love him more than words can say. And he is my son in every way that matters. But he is not my son by birth. The confusion on the reporters' faces was visible. Leo is adopted, I said, my voice ringing with clarity. He shares no blood with me. And he shares no blood with the people suing me for grandparent rights. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a truth so complete, so devastating, that it left no room for argument. Their entire case legal, moral, and public was not just lost. It was a fraud. They had no claim. They had no connection. They had nothing. They are not his grandparents, I concluded, looking straight into the camera lens, speaking directly to them. They are strangers. Not his blood. Not his claim. They have no rights here. This ends today. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. For them, the press conference was a public execution. The story of the greedy, fake grandparents who had tried to sue their abandoned daughter for access to her adopted son went national. My parents became villains in a story they could no longer control. They're perfect. Respectable lives crumbled to dust. The community they had cared so much about turned on them. Their friends stopped calling. Their country club membership was revoked. My father's small consulting firm lost all its clients overnight. They were forced to sell their house, the house they kicked me out of, to pay their legal bills. I read in the paper that they moved to a small town in Florida, disappearing into a quiet, shame-filled obscurity. They had finally achieved what they had done to me 22 years ago. They had been erased. Caleb Montgomery faced even worse. The evidence of his attempt to conspire for a fraudulent settlement was handed over to the district attorney. He was charged with conspiracy and wire fraud. His desperate grasp for my money ended with him facing federal charges. I felt nothing watching them fall. No satisfaction. No joy. Just a quiet, final sense of closure. They were no longer characters in my story. They were just a footnote in the preface. My story was about what came next. With the lawsuit over, a profound peace settled over my life. The fortress I had built no longer felt like a defensive structure. It felt like a home. Leo and I grew even closer. The ordeal had been difficult for him, but he had seen firsthand the strength of the family we had built. A family of choice, not of chance. He went off to college, not as the boy wonder from the tech magazines, but as a confident, kind young man who knew he was loved unconditionally. I poured my energy into the Beatrice Thorne Foundation. We expanded our mission, opening shelters for homeless teens and funding scholarships for single mothers. I was becoming Beatrice, using my resources to give other scared young girls the one thing they needed most: a chance. An unexpected ally. Julian was by my side through it all. Our friendship, forged in late-night study sessions and hardened in legal battles, had deepened into something more. He was my partner in every sense of the word. He was quiet, steady, and he saw me for exactly who I was. He had seen my scars, and he had helped me turn them into armor. One evening, a year after the press conference, we were at the grand opening of a new youth center the foundation had built. It was a beautiful building, full of light and hope. As we stood watching a group of teenagers laughing and painting a mural, Julian took my hand. "Look what you built, Audrey," he said quietly. "From all that pain, you built this?" I looked at him, at his kind eyes and the gentle smile that had been a constant in my life for 2 decades. I thought of the long, lonely road I had traveled, the betrayals, the loss, the struggle. And I realized it had all led me here, to this moment of peace and purpose. We built it. I corrected him. And right there, surrounded by the hopeful sounds of the future I was helping to create, I did something I had never planned. I proposed to him. I asked him to be my partner, my husband, my family, officially. His answer was a simple, heartfelt yes. There was no grand, dramatic moment. It was quiet. It was certain. It was real. It was a choice. My life, once defined by the choices others had made for me, was now a testament to the power of my own. I had reclaimed my name, my future, and the very definition of family. I had faced the ghosts of my past not with anger, but with truth. And in the end, I had found something far greater than victory.